Hey guys! Tonight we travel back to a world where your job isn't replying to emails or finishing spreadsheets, but galloping across endless grasslands with a message that could decide the fate of empires. Welcome to the postal system of the Mongol Empire. Yeah, it's not as cozy as your Gmail tab, and spoiler alert, there's no Control+C if you drop the message into a river. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and what time you're listening in the comments. I always love seeing where this sleepy little caravan wanders. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tug your boots tighter, feel the leather reins in your hands, and shift slightly in the saddle. The sky above you is a stretched canvas of midnight blue, dusted with stars so bright they feel like someone poked holes in the heavens just to peek down on you. It's cold, real cold, but not enough to stop your orders. You are a relay courier in the Mongol Empire and order Jeki if you want to impress the locals. It's around the year 1240. The Great Khan's word travels on horseback, and tonight it's riding with you. You're carrying a message cylinder, bound in leather and sealed with the mark of the imperial court. It's light, but its weight isn't physical, it's strategic. Somewhere hundreds of miles away, a commander is waiting on this message to decide whether to march, retreat, or hold his ground. Your horse is jittery. Maybe it senses attention, or maybe it just knows you're going to be switching it out at the next yam station. These stations are the Mongols' not-so-secret weapon. Every 30 to 40 kilometers, there's a way station with fresh horses, food, water, and shelter. You ride hard, switch horses, and keep going. No check-ins, no Instagram posts, no breaks for soup, unless you want to be soup for the wolves. The Mongols didn't invent the idea of relay messaging. Ancient Persia and China had their own versions, but they industrialized it like nobody else. Under Genghis Khan, the network grew like veins across a living empire, from the cold steppes of Siberia to the dry heat of Mesopotamia. Tonight, your route starts from Karakorum, the imperial capital in the north. You've got 3 stations ahead before sunrise, and if the roads are dry, you might hit the Black Steppe Pass before dawn. If not, well, there's a reason riders like you carry backup boots, dried meat, and a healthy fear of both nature and time. You nudge the horse forward, and the rhythm begins, hooves drumming the dirt, the wind clawing at your coat, the stars spinning slowly above like a compass that doesn't lie. Now here's a fun fact to keep your spirits up. Some historians estimate that elite riders could deliver messages faster than today's postal trucks. Seriously, on a good day, with smooth transitions between stations, a courier could cover up to 400 kilometers in a single day. That's like riding from Paris to Brussels and back, with only horse sweat to keep you going. Of course, there's still some debate about those numbers. Scholars can't agree on whether that's average, exceptional, or just Genghis Khan bragging in his end-of-year performance review. But we do know the infrastructure was tight. No yam station could afford to break down. The empire depended on information flow, like a body depends on blood. And now, that blood is pulsing under your saddle. You reach the first station just as your horse starts to falter. The stable master sees you coming and already has another mount ready. One breathes steam like a dragon. You don't even dismount properly. You swing onto the next horse while passing the sealed message tube, grabbing a flask of Arag, that's fermented mare's milk, in case you're wondering. It tastes like a yogurt had an identity crisis. But it'll keep you warm. You're not a warrior. You're not a noble. But out here, under these stars, with the Empire depending on your speed, you feel like you matter more than any sword swinger. And when you ride off into the black horizon again, the station lights behind you flicker out like the closing of one chapter. Because the next one, my friend, has just begun. But the horizon is beginning to soften, just a shade. You know that shade. It means you're racing against dawn now. The second horse beneath you is younger, leaner, and faster. It gallops like it has something to prove. Maybe it does. Maybe it dreams of being remembered in a tale one day. Hoof notes and all. And you? You're just trying to keep your spine in one piece as the steppe blurs into a cold gray smear around you. Somewhere behind you, the last station is fading into memory. Ahead, unknown terrain and empty path, and the soft promise of another firelight at the next yam station, if you make it there before the frostbite's too deep. You know what's amazing about the Mongol postal system? It actually worked. Like, impressively well. There were more than 1,000 stations at its height, stretching across nearly 30,000 kilometers of territory. The system was designed so that a relay message could go from Karakorum to Baghdad, a distance of about 5,000 kilometers, in a matter of weeks, not months. And you're part of that machinery now. A living gear in an empire built on velocity. At every station, horses were rotated, riders were refreshed, and even the message containers themselves were sometimes replaced for lighter models. Riders like you wore official plaques called Pesa, which acted as passports, priority badges, and don't mess with me, signs all in one. With the right Pesa, you could requisition food, shelter, and fresh horses from any subject of the empire. But not all Pesa were created equal. You, for example, only have a bronze-grade Pesa, which gets you fresh horses but not a hot dinner. Silver Pesa means you're trusted, maybe even given a feather mattress. Gold? Gold Pesa holders were considered imperial envoys. They had the right to command governors, requisition troops, even have their own escort guard. A gold-level courier might have his name recorded in court archives. You're hoping your horse doesn't throw a shoe. Still, there's a kind of poetry in this cold. You're moving through terrain where few dare to go, on paths trodden by legends. Rumors say that even Subutai, the great general himself, once rode these same yam lines to deliver battle plans. You think about that as you pass through a narrow gulch, where the wind funnels like it's been sharpening its blades for centuries. You lean lower into your horse's mane. Every drop of time you save could change what happens on the battlefield, or in court, or in a family waiting for news from their sons. Then suddenly a sound, not wind, not hoofbeats. It's a bell. You slow your horse and look to your left. There, barely visible, is a post carved with two characters you can barely read in the dark. It marks a mini-post, an emergency relay point. Not an official station, but a place where locals might wait with supplies. Or where a second-rank courier, like you might have to pick up extra duties when someone else failed. You sigh, rein in your horse, and pull to stop. A boy no older than 12 steps out from a tiny rock shelter. He's holding a satchel. No badge, no plaque, just a small scroll tied with red twine. "My brother didn't come back," he says. "He went toward Uliastai. He should have been here by nightfall." You nod. There's no time for questions. You know what this means. His brother might be dead, or lost, or just behind schedule. Either way, that scroll needs to move. You take it. Now, you're carrying two messages. One imperial, one unknown. You don't know what's in the boy's scroll. It could be a shopping list. It could be a warning of invasion. You won't open it. It's not your place. But you feel the weight of another life on your saddle now. You gallop on, and the terrain starts to change. Trees appear. A frozen creek. The wind smells like pine. You're entering a transition zone, where steppe meets forest, a tricky place, known for wild animals and bandits. You grip the reins tighter. You're not allowed to fight, not officially, but every courier carries a small blade, just in case. And even here, deep in this silent corridor between mountain and plain, you see signs of empire. Cleared paths, carved markers, and the faint wheel tracks of past wagons. It reminds you that this system, the Mongol Yam, wasn't just for war. It carried tax reports, census records, wedding announcements, edicts, emergency calls, all of it. This empire ran not just on conquest, but on communication. And in that moment, you realize something a little profound. You're not just galloping through darkness. You're a part of the light that connects cities, courts, hearts. You are a living thread in the world's most ambitious web. Your horse lets out a sharp breath, and you let your eyes flick once to the horizon. There, a speck of firelight. Next station in sight. Over the years, you've ridden more horses than you can count, but none quite like this one. Short in stature, thick at the neck, with a gaze that seems to carry memories of winters you yourself have never endured. This is no palace-trained stallion, no decorative parade animal bedecked in silk and bells. No, this is something else entirely. A creature forged by distance, by hardship, by wind and grit and cold nights under indifferent stars. Mongol horses are not fast in the elegant, explosive way of city racers. Their speed is something deeper, something geological like rivers. They do not sprint. They flow with tireless momentum over terrain that would break lesser beasts. These animals eat snow rather than waiting for streams, sleep standing up when there's no shelter, and gallop for hours with the kind of quiet endurance that leaves enough breath in their lungs to fight off a wolf when they must. And you, fragile and human, do your best simply to stay in the saddle and not be flung into the dust of your own limits. Every courier eventually finds a favorite. Some whisper secrets or prayers into their horses' ears. Others tie bits of cloth, charms, or tokens into manes. You once knew an old rider who kissed both ears of his mount before each ride, a ritual he claimed was equal parts for luck and for apology, for what he would ask of the creature in the hours to come. The official histories of the YAM system rarely linger on this part, but every seasoned rider knows it. Most of the horses you ride don't belong to you. They are station property, anonymous and interchangeable, swapped every 30 kilometers like boots in a relay. Yet even in this transience, some horses etch themselves into your memory. The gray mare who waited like a ghost outside Karakoram, the black stallion with a lightning-shaped scar down his cheek, the chestnut gelding who, in the middle of a predator chase, stopped just long enough to stare down a bear before bolting. There was one journey where you had no replacements, no relief station ready, just you and a dun-colored mare with a single pale blue eye. For 5 stations, she carried you without pause. She made no noise, never faltered, and when your body gave out at the 5th stop, your legs trembling beneath you, she merely turned her head toward the distant horizon, toward the next outpost, as if to remind you without pity or reprimand that you were not the only one doing the work. Scholars still debate how these animals were trained. Were they born wild and broken later through force? Or were they carefully bred and raised with a lifetime of human contact from a foal's first breath? No agreement has been reached, and perhaps it doesn't matter. What remains are the facts. A horse that drinks less, eats nearly anything, feels no need for shelter, and still outruns the fastest cavalry the world can send against it. Now, as you reach down and stroke this one's mane, coarse with dust and dry wind, you're reminded that this horse doesn't care who you are. It doesn't recognize titles, rank, or reputation. All it wants to know is whether you can hold on. So you tighten the reins, shift your weight, and ride. You arrive at the 2nd station just before the sun slices the sky open with gold. You're cold, hungry, sore, and, let's be honest, probably smelling like 12 hours of wind and horse. But you made it. The YAM station is modest, just a long, low shelter made from stone and bundled reed. There's a wooden post out front with an iron symbol hanging from it, the mark of official service. Inside, a fire crackles low, and a pot of something that vaguely resembles stew is bubbling. The station keeper nods when he sees you and tosses a thumb toward the stables. No words exchanged. He knows what you need. This isn't hospitality, it's efficiency. The horse is ready, brushed, fed, and saddled. Your 3rd steed of the night. You change mounts with practiced ease, letting your muscles scream in silence. As you secure the 2 scrolls, one imperial, one unofficial, you glance at the stew and debate a risk that every Mongol courier has faced. Do you eat? Here's the problem. Stew might help you last longer, but it also might slow you down. And sometimes it might do worse. Bad stew has ended more than one courier's run. There are stories, legendary ones. One tale says a courier in the West once ate half-rotted goat meat at a station, and had to stop every 10 minutes behind a bush for the next 100 miles, he still delivered the message. But the scroll had suffered slightly. People say you can still smell it in the archives of Tabriz. Another rider supposedly fainted from spoiled mare's milk and woke up 3 hours later being sniffed by vultures. True or not, these tales live on in whispers over campfires. So you pass. Just a sip of water, a bite of hard cheese. You're not risking imperial embarrassment. Back in the saddle, and you're off again. Now comes the flatlands, the stretch known as Black Dust Wind Valley, where gusts can knock riders off course, and even horses panic at invisible shapes in the sand. Scholars debate whether these shapes were just mirages or something more sinister. Either way, you don't like it. The wind here howls like it's arguing with the sky. You lean low, eyes narrowed. Every blink feels like dragging dry parchment across your eyeballs. But you keep riding. Why? Because someone in Karakoram decided this message mattered more than your comfort. And you swore to deliver it. And not just because of honor. There's another reason. You want the gold badge. See, Mongol couriers were more than messengers. They were scouts, strategists, sometimes even spies. The highest among them, those who had delivered dozens of successful runs, could be promoted, and promotion came with perks. Gold Pesa holders didn't just get better food and beds. They were allowed to command regional officials, deliver secret messages directly to generals or royal family members, and even wear a distinct fur cloak as a sign of status. And there's this story, you've heard it many times. A courier named Tuman Altan, after years of tireless service, was given a gold pesa by Ogidi Khan himself. When he entered any town, people bowed. When he arrived at a battle camp, soldiers parted for him like he was a general. And once, when he was ambushed by bandits, he convinced them to become couriers instead. Not joking. Apparently, he said, at least as a courier, you won't get executed for failing. Is it true? Historians disagree. As always. But the story keeps you warm as the cold wind claws at your face. You finally clear the valley and enter safer land. There's a row of trees ahead, a rare sight, and behind them, you see a merchant caravan moving slowly. You wave as you pass. They stare. Couriers like you don't wave often. You don't stop. You don't talk. You fly. And fly you do, cutting through dawn like an arrow launched by history. But then, your horse slows. Not out of exhaustion. Out of resistance. You feel it in your knees. The rhythm is wrong. You dismount. Inspect its hooves. Cracked. One of the shoes is split. Maybe from a rock. Maybe from the cold. Either way, it's dangerous now. One misstep, and the horse goes lame. Or worse, throws you. You look around. Nearest station is still hours ahead. This is the third great fear of Mongol couriers. Not wolves. Not thieves. A busted horse. You unpack the emergency kit from your saddle. It contains exactly 4 things. A short rope, a spare shoe, a small hammer, and a prayer charm from a Buddhist monk near Karakoram. You've never used any of them. Until now, you get to work. The wind's still howling. Your fingers are numb. But somehow, with clumsy grace and very loud swearing inside your mind, you replace the shoe. You whisper thanks to your horse. It nods, or maybe it just wants to keep moving. Either way, so do you. You mount again and ride, slower now, careful. But you're not giving up. You've got 2 messages, a ticking clock, and no room for failure. The road bends. Trees clear. And there, like a candle in a cave, another station, almost halfway there. It began before the scrolls, before the seal, before you even knew how to mount a horse without falling twice. It began with a trial, not a written one, not a loud one, a quiet ride through fog, led by a man who didn't speak unless he had to. You were younger then, lighter, louder, more certain that speed came from muscle. You were wrong. The man ahead of you barely moved his shoulders, but his horse flew. He never looked back. At one point, he dropped the pouch on purpose. Didn't say a word. Just kept going. It took you 10 minutes to realize you were supposed to notice. To stop. To pick it up. And by the time you caught up, your lungs were burning. He glanced once. "You're too late," he said, "but not too slow." And then he handed you a sealed scroll. "Try again. This time, make the road believe you belong." There are no papers that say you became a courier that night. No ceremony. No applause. Only a bruise on your thigh, dust in your teeth, and a faint warmth in your hand, where the scroll used to be. Some historians debate whether new messengers were tested formally. Others believe it was always informal, just one rider watching another and deciding, "You'll do." There's no answer. There's only the moment your breath matched your horse's gait, and you stopped feeling like a traveler, and started feeling like the road had accepted you. The snow starts small. Soft flurries drifting like ash, lazy and innocent. You think, maybe it won't stick. Riders always think that. It's the first lie of winter. Within the hour, the road is gone. Not metaphorically, literally gone. The trail you were following, compact dirt pressed by 100 hooves, has vanished beneath a fast-thickening sheet of white. And the snow isn't drifting anymore. It's driving, sideways, into your eyes, into your thoughts. Welcome to the northern winter line. You were warned about this. There's a reason the Empire built alternate seasonal routes, and you've just been assigned to one. The winter route is shorter, but it cuts through higher ground where storms linger like forgotten guests. Most riders avoid it, but you're carrying a scroll labeled 2 bird class, an urgent tier just below your orders. You have no choice. Your horse hates it, not the mission, just the snow. It stumbles, snorts, tries to turn sideways. You tug the reins gently, whispering things like "easy" and "please don't throw me into a pine tree." Visibility drops. Wind bites. Your gloves freeze at the fingertips. You try to drink water. It's ice. The scroll, your message, is tucked inside your coat. You check it once. The leather is dry, but the seal is frosting over. You worry. Will the ink blur? At the next yam station, if you make it, you'll ask for wax wrapping. But that's still 2 legs away. You pass a broken tree, then a frozen ox, then nothing but white. And then your horse stops. Not because of fear, because of instinct. You realize the snow underfoot has changed. It's powdery, loose, and too smooth. Ice beneath. One wrong step, and your horse could fall. You dismount. You walk beside it. Your boots crunch, then slide, then sink. Your thighs go numb. Your breath feels like it's made of needles. But you keep going. Because if you stop, it's not just a scroll that freezes. It's you. At one point you slip, land hard, roll downhill a few feet. The scroll hits your ribs. Still safe. You look up. The sky is a blank dome. No stars. No horizon. Just cold and the sound of your heart. Then, finally, a glimmer. The station. Not a grand one. Just a half-buried hut with a flickering torch above the door. You stumble toward it, dragging the horse, mumbling things like, "Alive, I'm alive, mostly." Inside, the keeper doesn't speak. Just pours hot water into a bowl and gestures for your hands. You thaw slowly. You unwrap the scroll. It's intact, but frost has etched tiny cracks into the wax seal. Barely visible. You wrap it tighter. Outside, the storm howls. Inside, your pulse slows. You made it, but only just. And you remember what an old courier once said. It's not the sword that kills us. It's the season. It was supposed to go right. Simple enough. You had the scroll. You had the route. You had the words from the station master. Deliver to the West Post. Don't stop. Don't talk. So, of course, you went east. It wasn't your fault. Not really. The snow was heavier than usual. The marker post was missing. And the wind, it whispered wrong things. By the time you realized the mistake, you'd already passed 2 ridges and one suspiciously cheerful goat. You stared at the scroll in your hand. Then you stared at the sky. It did not help. You tried to fix it. You rerouted. You galloped a long bend back through a forest of sighing trees, through mud that sucked at your boots, through silence that felt like judgment. And when you arrived, panting, muddy, late, the officer just raised an eyebrow. "At least it's not a marriage proposal," he said. "Those are harder to redirect." You smiled, weakly. Mainstream records rarely mention mistakes. The YAM system is famous for speed and precision. But every system has cracks. And sometimes the wind really does lie. The scroll reached its target. Late, but intact. The command was minor. No lives lost. No cities burned. But your pride limped a little. That night, you stayed silent at dinner. Until the station cook handed you a bowl and said, "Good couriers don't make no mistakes. They just make fewer." Each time, you nodded, and this time, you wrote the next route. Twice. The road is dry again. Too dry. After days of snow and ice, your boots almost feel surprised to land on solid earth. Your new horse snorts like it doesn't trust the weather. Smart animal. You take a moment to check your water skin. Still half full. Good. Your stomach grumbles. Less good. Food's running low, but you'll make it to the next station by nightfall. Probably. You've learned by now that YAM couriers don't fear the enemy. They fear everything else. You've heard stories. Around fire pits. In passing. Half whispered by station keepers who've seen too much and say too little. They say there are 3 deaths that wait on this road, and none of them wear armor. First, the wolves. You haven't seen them, but you've heard them. Not howling quiet. That's what makes them dangerous. They follow at a distance, watching, waiting. Mongol horses are fast, but even they can't outrun cold hunger. Most couriers know if you're too slow, too tired, or stop for too long in the wrong stretch of land. They find you, or what's left of your horse. There's a trick, they say. Tie small bells to the saddle. Not to scare wolves, but to alert your horse. Horses panic before you do. If your mount twitches when nothing's visible, trust it and keep riding. Second, the water. More precisely, the wrong water. On the steppe, streams can look identical. Cold, clear, inviting. But drink the wrong one, and you might end up riding sideways. Some carry invisible poisons, bacteria from buried animals, mineral salts from old ground. You don't feel it right away. But a few hours later, your stomach flips, your vision doubles, and suddenly the horse is carrying a human-shaped sack of regret. That's why couriers carry a pinch of powdered coal. It's not for trade. It's for emergencies. You stir into your flask and hope it buys you a second chance. Most times, it does. Not always. There's still debate among scholars about how Mongol riders dealt with steppe-borne illnesses. Some say they had strong stomachs. Others say they just got lucky. And unlucky. Repeatedly. Third, the absence. The road is supposed to have rhythm. Horse station, horse station. If you ride too long without seeing anything, that's when the mind begins to bend. No markers. No fires. No sound except hooves and wind. It's not death by ambush. It's death by forgetting why you're riding at all. One courier in the old records apparently just stopped. Not injured. Not sick. Just stopped riding, got off his horse, and sat down. A week later, someone found him near a riverbank, alive but silent. He never spoke again. People call it the blankness. Not fear, not madness, just a moment when the mission loses shape and the world becomes too quiet to carry it forward. It's why you talk to your horse, why you count stars, why you hum nonsense songs that sound like nothing but keep your brain moving. You've memorized one now. 1 hoof, 2 hoof, Starter right. Keep the wind behind. Keep the moon in sight. You're not afraid of battle, but you are afraid of being alone for too long with nothing but doubt and dust. The Empire equips you for war, but no one equips you for these three things. You check your scroll. Still dry, still sealed. You drink sparingly. You ride carefully. You tie a bell to your saddle. And you hum, not because it helps, but because it's something. The order came in a language you didn't speak. That wasn't rare. The Empire stretched farther than one tongue could carry. Turkic in the west, Chinese in the east, Persian in the markets, and still Mongolian at its heart. So you listened and learned, not whole languages, just enough to hear a danger word, just enough to know when wait meant go. You trained your memory like a translator's ear. Tone, rhythm, hesitation, where the speaker's hands went. When the meaning got hard, sometimes they gave you a written scroll and a whispered version. You memorized both, because ink smears, but a whisper stays. A merchant once told you, words have shadows. Learn those, and you'll hear the part they didn't say. He was right. Official records show interpreters at court, but not on the road. On the road, you were the court, you were the scroll, you were the trust. And if you got a phrase wrong, you didn't blame your tongue. You blamed your legs, and you ran faster. Some say couriers were trained in 6 languages. Others say only 2. Historians still debate whether formal multilingual training existed, or if couriers simply learned what they needed to survive. You think it was both, because the road doesn't care what you speak, only that you arrive. One day, you'll hear a phrase again, from a child or a trader or an old soldier, and it'll sound like nothing special. But your hands will tighten, your heart will skip, because somewhere inside you, a scroll is still waiting to be spoken. You were told that some travelers come from far away, but you didn't think far meant across an entire continent. Your encounter happens just outside a trade post near the river basin. You're passing through for water, maybe a strip of dry goat, when a strange voice calls out, "Wait, wait, you're a messenger, yes?" You turn. The man is tall, pale, his robe is too long, and his beard looks like he forgot which century he's in. His Mongolian is. Not great. I see you ride fast. Change horse. No stop. You like, what is word? Zoom. You stare. He tries again, switching to Persian. Then to a weird mix of Chinese and Italian accented Arabic. You catch fragments. You people, incredible system. All horses. Fast. No delay. Terrifying efficiency. You finally respond in Persian. Are you from the West? He beams. Venice. He thumps his chest proudly. Marco Polo. You nod slowly. You've never heard the name, but he seems very impressed with you. He circles you like a scholar observing a rare bird. You, my friend, he says, are faster than any man I have ever seen not falling off a cliff. You thank him. Sort of. He bombards you with questions. How many horses do you change per day? Are the stations really every 40 kilometers? Who writes the messages? Are you allowed to sleep? Is there a secret signal for danger? Can you deliver personal letters? You answer what you can. He writes everything down with a tiny stylus and a leather-bound notebook. At one point, he even asks if he can touch your pesa. No, you say. He respects that. Then he tells you something surprising. I follow you, he says, for 2 days, from East Station. You frown. Not stalking, he adds quickly. I want to see how you live, how the Empire lives. He tells you about his journey, years of travel from the Mediterranean to China. He describes kingdoms like you describe horses. He speaks of spices and cities and ships. But what excites him most? The road, the yam system. This, he says, tapping his notebook, is Empire in motion. Your roads. They do not conquer. They connect. You're not sure what to say. He claps your shoulder and grins. One day, people in my land will read about you. About this. They will not believe me, but I will write it anyway. He gives you a gift before you leave. A small brass coin from Venice. It's worn and warm from his pocket. Worth nothing here, but it feels important. You take it, tuck it into your pouch. He waves as you ride off. You look back once. He's writing. Fast. Like he's racing you. You never wore a uniform. That's the first rule. A courier isn't supposed to be seen. Just noticed barely, like a breeze passing by. So you wore what travelers wore. Dust-colored cloak. Plain saddle. No emblems, no gold. Just a ring tied to your belt. If someone knew to look. In safer lands, you could ride fast. But in uncertain territories, you became someone else. A spice trader. A wandering monk. A herder searching for strayed goats. Your horse didn't like it, but you got good at carrying dried fish and prayer beads with equal ease. One time, you rode into a village dressed as a falconer. No one suspected. You drank sour milk with elders. You slept on a hay pile. You even offered to check someone's injured bird. The scroll? Tucked inside your boot. There was a saying among elite couriers. The better the disguise, the less you have to lie. Mainstream records mention the Pesa and the road network, but they rarely detail the disguises. Some say there were secret trainings. Others claim couriers made it up as they went. Historians still debate whether these methods were formally taught or simply born from necessity over time. You remember the hardest part, not speaking too well. A real merchant stumbles over formal words. A monk isn't supposed to argue. A herder asks more than he answers. You learn to mumble, to laugh wrong, to leave first. That's how you passed. One night, a man stopped you on the road. You're too quiet for a trader, he said. You shrugged, too tired to haggle. He nodded and let you go. You always assumed the road just existed. You rode it, changed horses, ate, slept, moved on. But now, as you climb a narrow pass between two dry hills, you begin to realize something. This road was chosen, not just drawn on a map, but calculated. Every turn, every bend, every stop, the elevation shifts feel deliberate. The river crossings perfectly spaced. The stations, nestled in wind-sheltered dips, or just beyond the reach of flood-prone soil. Someone thought this through. You pause on a ridge. Below you, a narrow gorge filled with broken boulders, gnarled trees, and water too shallow to drink, but too deep to cross easily. To your left, the road curves gently along the ridge spine, bypassing it all. Not luck, design. That's when you remember something a veteran courier told you once. A smart road doesn't fight the land. It dances with it. Mainstream history tells you the Yam system was massive. Over 30,000 kilometers of route, stretching from Korea to Hungary. But what they don't always explain is why it worked. It's not just the distance. It's how those lines were drawn. Some followed old Silk Road arteries. Others avoided them on purpose, to cut through safer territory. Some hugged rivers for water access. Others been away from them, to avoid flooding during melt seasons. You pass a marker carved into the rock. It's subtle, just a groove shaped like a horn. That's not decoration. It means turn east before the stones fall. A warning from road architects who understood time better than weather. The Mongols didn't just conquer terrain. They mapped its moods. Here's a strange detail. Some stations were deliberately built out of sight of roads. Why? To avoid raids, bandits, rival tribes, even curious locals. By tucking stations behind rises or inside wooded folds, they kept the infrastructure safe from unwanted attention. It wasn't just about building a road. It was about building a road that could survive. You once rode with a junior architect from Karakoram. He wasn't a rider. He was sketching. He told you the design team used animal migration maps to help predict weather patterns. Herd movement hinted at rainfall zones, wind patterns, and grass health. You didn't understand all of it, but you respected the fact that someone had thought ahead for you years before you rode these hills. Now you know why some stretches are flat while others wind. Why some take you through woods, others through open plain. It's not a mistake. It's strategy. Even today, scholars argue over who designed the original Yam grid. Some say Genghis Khan personally directed the key routes. Others credit Ogidi Khan's team of engineers. Still others argue that many roads simply absorbed older tribal paths and were stitched together. There's still no consensus, one historian wrote, on whether the genius of the Yam was planning or pragmatism. You descend the ridge, now fully aware, this road isn't just ground. It's thought. And someone long before your saddle touched it, imagined exactly where your hoof prints would fall. You believed you were riding alone, as the solitude of the journey often enveloped you, with only the company of your horse, a single scroll, and the endless path stretching before you. Yet, on certain roads, you were not the sole traveler. For somewhere behind you, or occasionally ahead, another rider followed a parallel course. You never met face to face, as the design of the system ensured your paths remained separate. You did not ride side by side. Your appearances bore no resemblance, and your routes diverged entirely, yet you both carried the same vital message. This method, known as the split relay, was a carefully orchestrated system reserved for the rarest and most critical scrolls, orders too significant to risk being lost to the perils of wind, war, or misfortune. Two riders, dispatched from the same origin and bound for the same destination, took entirely different paths, ensuring that if one was delayed, injured, or met a worse fate, the other would still reach the end point. On one extraordinary occasion, both riders arrived at the destination, each bearing the same scroll, sealed with the same mark, and delivered at precisely the same hour. They stood, gazing at one another in astonishment, before breaking into laughter, with one remarking, "Well, now they must decide which of us rode the faster route." To most couriers, the existence of the second rider was little more than a whispered rumor, but you knew it was real, for you had once been that second rider yourself. You never learned the fate of the first rider, only that you reached the destination. The scroll was opened, and no one questioned why your boots bore no traces of snow from the journey. Historians continue to debate whether the split relay was a formal policy, consistently implemented, or merely a practice reserved for the most critical campaigns. Some dismiss it as a myth, a tale spun from the hardships of the road, but in old journals, faint traces remain, brief entries like, "Arrived as a second rider, with no mention made of my counterpart, yet I was still fed and paid as though I were the first." And perhaps that is a strange comfort woven into system, the knowledge that, even if you were to fall, somewhere out there, another rider would carry the message forward to its destination. It starts with a question. How far can you ride in one day? Not a trick, not a proverb, just something they ask new couriers around the campfire, when the stars are high and the tea has gone bitter. You answered wrong, of course. Everyone does. Maybe 100 kilometers. The veteran riders laughed so hard one of them dropped his saddlebag into the fire. 100? That's breakfast. You're on the ultra-long route now, a chain of Yam stations known unofficially as the Arrow Line. Not because it's straight, it isn't, but because it's meant to move like an arrow, fast, silent, unstoppable. The goal? 400 kilometers one day. Not for glory, not for fun, but because the scroll you're carrying bears the Triple Hawk Seal, a rare emergency dispatch used only for major frontier incidents. This kind of message doesn't wait. Your strategy is simple. Change horses fast, ride faster. Every 25, 30 kilometers, a fresh mount is waiting, sweatless, alert, ready to bolt. You don't stop to eat. You don't untie your saddlebag. You barely speak. Ride, swap, ride again. A scroll becomes a relay baton. You become a blur in the wind. At one station, the keeper meets you with a horse already running. He holds the reins with both hands like he's passing off a wild god. You vault from one mount to the next mid-trot. Your bag never touches the ground. It's not always elegant. You once bruised your thigh, so badly you rode the next leg sideways. Here's a strange but true detail. Some stations had test loops, short courses for horses to prove their readiness. If the keeper couldn't get the horse to reach speed in under 3 minutes, it wasn't clear for relay. And you had your own secret too. You chewed pine bark soaked in cold water to stay sharp. Not delicious, not recommended. But it worked. They say the fastest courier on record once made it from Karakoram to Lake Balkash in 48 hours. No sleep, no stops. Scholars argue whether that's even possible. Some call it a legend. Others found old station logs that suggest maybe, just maybe it happened. But you're not trying to be a record. You're just trying to make it by dusk. As the sun begins to dip, you reach the final relay point. You're sore. Your lips are cracked. Your horse is barely breathing through its nose. But you're on time. The station master opens a scroll with shaking hands. Reads, then nods. You did it. You dismount slowly. Your knees hate you. Your back has declared independence. But the wind is soft, and the ground doesn't feel like it's spinning. You drink something warm, not sure what it is. Tastes like boiled hooves. You don't care. You've ridden 400 kilometers in one breath of daylight. Not because you're a hero, because someone had to. At the very last moment, you notice a subtle shift in the atmosphere. As the scroll you just picked up feels strangely off, its seal is perfectly intact, the ink still fresh. Yet the wrapping appears almost unnaturally pristine, and the horse prepared for you stand a little too calm. While the station master's overly broad smile sends a tightening sensation through your stomach. You ask, with a cautious edge to your voice, "Where's the scroll headed?" And he responds by naming a distant garrison near the frontier, shrugging dismissively when you inquire about the message's contents, saying, "You don't need to know," which, while technically true, carries a tone that deepens your suspicion. Despite the unease, you mount the horse and begin your journey, as fulfilling your duty as a courier is what defines your role. As hours pass, you realize the route assigned to you deviates significantly from your usual path, looping south, then bending back north, and veering east again in a deliberate zigzag through precarious borderland trails that no experienced rider would ever choose independently. Throughout the journey, an unsettling feeling persists, as though unseen eyes are tracking your every move, and at one point, while crossing a ridge, you catch sight of two distant riders observing you from below, only for them to vanish when you attempt to wave, leaving you with a growing suspicion that you are not merely delivering a message, but serving as bait in a larger scheme. At the next stop, the pattern of oddities continues. A fresh horse is provided, a hot meal is served, and yet another scroll is handed over, its significance shrouded in silence by those around you. Sitting in the corner of the shelter, you watch the flame of the oil lamp flicker sideways in the wind, and, unable to suppress your doubts any longer, you ask the junior assistant, "Is this scroll real, or is it not meant to reach its destination?" After a tense silence, he responds in a hushed tone, revealing that the scroll is not intended to arrive, but is instead designed to be intercepted, unveiling the Empire's shadow scroll strategy, a deceptive tactic used in times of war, where fake messages are planted on real couriers, deliberately routed along visible paths to lure the enemy into believing they've secured a strategic victory. This revelation shakes you to your core, as you've always placed unwavering faith in the importance of the scrolls you carried, only to now discover that you are a pawn in a calculated performance meant to mislead, misdirect, and misinform the enemy. A strategy that proves more effective in open combat, because false information can inflict wounds deeper than any sword. You briefly consider turning back, But you quickly realize that abandoning the mission would unravel the plan, and any hesitation might prevent the enemy from taking the bait, transforming your role from a mere courier into a critical actor in a grand deception. You press onward, and 2 days later, you are intercepted by men clad in unfamiliar armor, their excessive politeness betraying their intentions as they request, "We're just checking your scroll," to which you comply without resistance, handing it over as part of the orchestrated ruse. They break the seal, read the contents, and struggle to conceal their reactions, while you maintain the pretense of ignorance, allowing them to release you, knowing full well that the scroll will not reach its intended destination, but will instead be passed up their chain of command, analyzed, trusted, and acted upon, setting the trap in motion. Days later, when you finally arrive at the Empire's true command post, a cloaked officer offers a silent nod and a brief. "Well done, they believed it," affirming the success of the deception, to which you respond with silence, as your role was never to understand the full scope of the plan, but simply to be seen by those meant to be deceived. Mainstream history acknowledges that the Mongols employed signal flags, riders, and smoke to orchestrate vast military movements. But less frequently discussed is their sophisticated use of postal deception, a form of subtle sabotage that leveraged fast roads and carefully crafted lies to manipulate their enemies. To this day, historians continue to debate how many pivotal battles were shaped not by the might of cavalry charges, but by the cunning of clever couriers who deliberately carried falsehoods to mislead their foes. And tonight, as you lay down to rest with no scroll in your possession, your saddlebag feels heavier than ever, weighed down by the invisible burden of the role you played in this intricate game of deception. You hadn't anticipated riding through the night, having planned instead to rest, change horses, and set out before the first light of dawn, but the arrival of a new scroll, marked with the unmistakable urgency of the Empire's seal, disregards your need for sleep, indifferent to the darkened sky above. Now, it's just you, your horse, and a makeshift torch, a humble construction of oiled reeds, horse fat, and a twist of cloth, simple yet reliable, crafted in the Mongol tradition to withstand the fiercest winds, burning not with flamboyant beauty, but with steadfast truth, or so it is meant to do. Tonight, however, the wind is impatient, lashing sideways across your face, tugging at your cloak, and toy with the flame in a relentless game of letting it burn, falter, and flare again, despite your futile attempts to shield it with your hand. You recall a lesson learned long ago. Night riding is not about hastening forward with reckless speed, but about finding a rhythm, synchronizing the steady beat of hooves, the pulsing gusts of wind, and the vast distances marked only by the stars above. With no road markers or lamps to guide you, your torch illuminates a mere 3 strides ahead, leaving the rest to a delicate balance of guesswork, memory, and the instincts honed by your horse's muscles. To keep your mind anchored, you hum a nonsensical courier song, passed down through generations, its lyrics of silver hooves and sky rivers carrying little meaning, but serving as a tether to prevent your thoughts from drifting into the abyss of the night. An ancient rule, as old as the Empire itself, dictates that if you ride by fire, you must carry more than one torch, so you keep a second unlit, secured tightly on your back, wrapped in dry fur alongside a coal pouch that holds a faintly glowing ember from the last station. The true challenge is not the enveloping darkness, but the wind, not merely its howling noise, but the way it disrupts the world around you, flattening the grass, distorting the stars in your vision, and causing your horse to twitch nervously with each sudden gust, until it feels as though the wind itself is a sentient force observing your every move. At one point, your torch succumbs to the darkness, not extinguishing abruptly, but gradually leaning into the void until it vanishes entirely, prompting you to attempt a relighting with a weakened coal and reluctant tinder. Crouching by the roadside, you shield the ember as though it were a fragile newborn bird, blowing gently and whispering encouragements until a faint flicker emerges, followed by a steady flame. And without cheering or even smiling, you rise, remount your horse, and resume your journey. Then, as if the steppe itself offers a reprieve, the wind pauses for a fleeting moment, just a breath, but enough to reveal the stars in their full clarity, reminding you that, despite the solitude, you are not truly alone. Mainstream historical accounts confirm that Mongol couriers occasionally rode at night, particularly under the guidance of full moons or during emergencies. Though some scholars argue that such journeys were rare due to the risks posed by limited visibility and the threat of wolves. While others cite evidence of fire relay techniques and dedicated night stations as proof of a sophisticated nocturnal system. Yet, no one disputes the haunting sentiment captured in an old journal's words. Night on the steppe was like riding through a whispered prayer, a feeling that resonates deeply as you move forward. Tonight, you are not racing against time but floating through it, with the wavering torch in your hand, holding steady despite the odds, the wind humming alongside you as a restless companion. And together, you ride onward into the vast, whispering night. Long ago, you posed a question to a senior courier asking, why did Genghis Khan create this vast network of roads, stations, relay systems, hundreds of horses kept in constant rotation, messengers, markers, and meticulously drawn maps? Without a moment's hesitation, he replied that it was because Genghis Khan despised waiting, an answer that carried the weight of truth in its simplicity. Genghis Khan was renowned as a conqueror, a masterful strategist, and a transformative force in human history. Yet to his messengers, he was defined by a singular obsession, an unwavering determination to never be caught off guard by the unknown. He believed that the lifeblood of an empire flowed through the rapid, unfiltered, and relentless transmission of news, declaring that victory hinged not merely on strength, but on the ability to know critical information sooner than one's enemies, and thus he constructed the yam, not as an ornamental flourish or a luxurious indulgence, but as the intricate nervous system sustaining the Mongol machine. While most rulers of his era depended on the slow spread of word-of-mouth reports, rudimentary smoke signals, or, in rare cases, pigeon messengers, Genghis Khan envisioned and implemented a far more sophisticated network, spanning thousands of kilometers, incorporating diverse breeds of horses, precise relay timings, written codes, and a hierarchy of prioritized dispatches, effectively transforming speed into a cornerstone of imperial policy. He is famously quoted as saying, "A message delayed is a city burned," a maxim that underscored the urgency with which he approached communication, ensuring that every element of the yam was designed to eliminate delays and safeguard the empire's responsiveness. The surviving fragments of the official yam charter reveal fascinating and stringent rules. Couriers were strictly forbidden from altering a message, even to correct a minor spelling error, ensuring absolute fidelity to the original text. Certain scrolls demanded specialized voice delivery training, requiring messengers to recite the contents with precise tone and cadence to preserve their intended impact. And if two relay stations failed to meet their timing obligations, both faced punishment, as the loss of time was considered a collective failure too grave to pin on a single party. Historians continue to debate whether Genghis Khan himself personally drafted these meticulous policies, or whether they evolved under the stewardship of his successor Ogdi and the Ministry of Communications, with one scholar noting that the line between Genghis and the system he inspired is blurred. Yet the relentless obsession with speed remains unmistakably his hallmark. You once witnessed a station elder perform a solemn ritual before burning an old, outdated scroll, bowing to it 3 times, not out of reverence for paper itself, but in acknowledgement of the significance it once held in the intricate web of the empire's communications. Perhaps this ritual captures the deeper truth behind the yam system. The horses, the dust-choked trails, the flickering torchlight, and the sleepless nights are not driven by a pursuit of glory or poetic ideals, but by a singular, pragmatic idea that an empire's survival depends not only on its raw strength, but on the speed and precision with which it can direct that strength to where it is most needed. Tonight, as you settle near the fire, you feel the scroll tucked beneath your coat, its warmth and unbroken seal a tangible reminder of its importance, knowing that somewhere, hundreds of kilometers away, someone is already preparing to act, their movement set in motion by the message you carry through the vast and unforgiving steppe. The scroll was marked with the unmistakable urgency of a red wax seal, bearing no name on its exterior, only a sharp, freshly pressed stamp from the capital that struck you as unfamiliar and foreboding. The officer who handed it to you issued a curt command, instructing you to deliver directly to Commander Darren with no copies made and no delays permitted. Yet his refusal to meet your eyes left an unsettling impression that lingered long after you departed. You were well acquainted with Darren, having fought alongside him 2 winters prior during the grueling flood campaign, where he held the eastern frontier with remarkable composure, ensuring the survival of his men through sheer resolve. And now this scroll, which you later discovered contained the stark orders. Immediate demotion, transfer to Mountain Supply Corps, effective upon receipt. Offered no explanation, no accompanying messenger, only the solitary weight of your responsibility. The air itself seemed charged with inexplicable wrongness, not stemming from the scroll alone, but from a heavy silence that surrounded its dispatch, as if the message concealed an unspoken truth. You set off, riding half the distance toward your destination, before pausing near an ancient stone watchtower, where you lingered for 2 days, convincing yourself that the delay was due to inclement weather or your horse's need for new shoes, though in truth, an unshakable instinct told you the scroll's contents were not honest. On the 3rd night, a hawk messenger arrived, small and swift, bearing the imperial crest and a new order that declared, scroll dated 17th, disregard, internal error, destroy immediately, prompting you to stare at both scrolls in the dim light before casting the original into the fire, watching it curl and vanish into ash. Commander Darren never learned of the initial order, remaining steadfast at his post, and 2 months later, he led the decisive defense of the southern ridge, a triumph that would have been impossible had the demotion been delivered. Historians continue to debate whether field couriers ever dared to delay politically charged orders, with some arguing that such actions were far beyond a courier station, while others maintain that a courier rides swiftly but thinks with even greater speed, navigating the delicate balance between duty and discernment. You still recall the scrolls weighing your hands, how it felt wrong even before you knew its contents, and sometimes, in quiet moments, you find yourself wondering how many other couriers rode blindly forward, carrying messages without questioning the truths or lies they bore. Before you ever learned to guide a horse across the vast steppe, you were taught to hone your memory, not merely for recalling names or places, but for mastering the intricate details of orders, routes, numbers, voice tones, and the precise repetition patterns that define a courier's craft. For as the elders often said, a courier's mind serves as a second saddle. Lose your horse, and you fall. Lose your memory, and you fail the empire itself. You encountered seasoned couriers, now elders, who possessed a remarkable ability to recite a 20-line military command after a single hearing, not in the form of poems or songs, but as official directives, each line delivered with its own distinct intonation, and every pause meticulously placed, because a misplaced breath could transform a command attack into an unintended order to stand down, with catastrophic consequences. The system that governed couriers was built on strict rules, such that when a message was too complex to hold in one's mind, you were trained to break it into rhythmic beats, akin to a drum line, where each phrase carried its own cadence, and every station along the route received the message in the same tempo, your voice becoming your unmistakable signature. At higher ranks, couriers underwent specialized training alongside musicians, learning cadence-based recall techniques to ensure flawless delivery. Though the origins of this practice remain shrouded in mystery, some speculate it was adapted from the oral traditions of Central Asian bards, while others believe it evolved from the memory games played by Mongol children, with historians still debating whether the Mongols developed a formalized coded mnemonic system or simply trained their couriers to achieve superhuman feats of recollection. Curiously, some messages were, by imperial decree, never committed to writing, a practice rooted in the understanding that paper could burn and ink could smudge, whereas a living person, with breath and voice, could adapt and endure, preserving a message through sheer will. You were once one of those writers, entrusted with carrying a verbal message of 86 words from a general to a commander across 3 provinces, never forgetting a single syllable, as the weight of the task left no room for error. You still recall the mnemonic tricks that sustained you, counting the message's rhythm and time with your horse's strides, using landmarks to anchor shifts between phrases, tapping your fingers in a coded pattern as you rode, and tying knots on your left sleeve to mark particularly difficult words. For if you forgot even a fragment, there was no return confessed failure. You simply waited to be replaced. As information formed a chain, and chains do not offer apologies for breaking. Even now, as scrolls and ink become more prevalent in the Empire's operations, certain commands remain voice only, their weight feeling different in your mouth, heavy, almost sacred, as if they carry the very soul of the Empire. One night, a younger rider, still green in the ways of the Yam, asked why not all messages were written down, prompting you to pause and reflect before answering that written words merely remember for you, relieving you of responsibility. But spoken ones serve as a reminder of who you are as a courier, a bearer of the Empire's will. The young rider nodded in quiet understanding, never raising question again, as if your words had settled the matter in his heart. It was a scroll that no hand ever opened. You had carried it for 2 days, traversing landscapes choked with dust and whipped by relentless wind. You had shielded it during a perilous river crossing, and guarded it through a fire that had swept across the northern pass. At night, you kept it tucked beneath your shirt as you slept, feeling the faint pressure of its seal against your ribs, as though it might speak if it dared. When you finally arrived at your destination, exhausted and sore, the man to whom a message had been addressed had already departed, perhaps transferred, perhaps lost, perhaps dead. No one could say. You had asked if another officer might receive in his place, but the officer on duty simply shook his head, his tone unbending. "Not without his seal," he said flatly. "Orders are orders." So, without protest, you placed the scroll gently on the edge of the table, sat beside it for a brief, weightless moment, and then stood up and left. No one came after you. No one dispatched a rider to retrieve what you had left behind. No one inquired about the contents of the message you had protected like your own breath. It remained precisely where you had left it, a scroll, sealed with red wax, eventually filed away in some forgotten drawer, where it quietly slipped from memory. Even now, you sometimes wonder what was inside that silent tube of parchment. Was it a change of orders, urgent and strategic? A warning meant to prevent loss? A pardon that arrived too late? A proposal meant to shift allegiances or mend a broken bond? You will never know, and neither, it seems, will anyone else. The official chronicles, of course, tell us how many messages were sent across the Empire. They count them by the thousands, as if numbers alone can convey meaning. But none of those tallies ever mention the messages that never had the chance to speak. Years later, while passing through that same station on another errand, older now, slower, but still in service, you noticed that the table was still there, untouched by time. Behind the storage room, high on a shelf cloaked in dust, rested a bundle of scrolls, each wrapped tightly, their seals faded but unbroken. Among them, unmistakably, was yours, still sealed, still waiting. You asked the station boy what those scrolls were. He glanced over, then shrugged with casual indifference. "Dead letters," he said, as though naming ghosts. "Some people think they still carry luck." Then, almost absently, he reached out and tapped one of them with his finger, softly, reverently, and walked away without another word. You didn't move to touch it. You simply stood there, quiet and still, as if your breath might disturb whatever slumber these messages had found. And for a fleeting moment, you felt not like a courier, nor like a man revisiting a former life, but like a sentence, carefully written, sealed away, and never once read aloud. You arrived just before dusk. The station looks ordinary. Stone walls, sloped roof, a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. But as you dismount, the smell hits you. Soup. Thick, fatty, boiling something in a pot large enough to hide a horse's head. And someone is humming. You step inside. She doesn't look up. She's chopping wild onions with the kind of rhythm that says, "You're not the first courier today. You won't be the last." Every rider knows the horse isn't the only thing that keeps you moving. There's a cook who knows how to stretch one sheep into 4 meals. There's a farrier who resets a cracked hoof in under 10 minutes. There's the night guard who stares at a flame for hours, so you can sleep too. You know their names less often than your own horses, but you remember their hands. She ladles soup into a clay bowl and slides across the table. You nod in thanks. She grunts. Fair deal. While you eat, you watch the others. A boy cleans harnesses in the yard. His fingers move fast. His eyes never lift. Two men argue about grain weight. The older one keeps gesturing with a spoon. In the back, someone's grinding salt into a leather pouch like it's war powder. This isn't home, but it isn't a battlefield either. It's something in between, a place that understands what you carry, even if it never asks what's inside. Here's something rarely mentioned in records. Some station workers were born into the job. Families passed down posts like heirlooms. A grandmother would boil soup for riders for 40 years, never leaving her valley. Some left not even names behind. Just callous palms and clean knives. One rider once said, "The empire isn't fast because of horses. It's fast because someone made the water hot before you arrived." You believe it now. You've ridden in snow and sand and sleep. But it's the warm broth, the oiled saddle, the steady hands. That's what makes the road possible. Historians still debate how many people it took to keep the yam running. Some say one station needed 10 workers. Others say 50. One even claimed a single messenger relied on 200 support hands over a full route. There's no agreement, because no one ever counted the ones who didn't gallop. But you remember them, and tonight when you rest, you leave a small coin beneath your empty bowl. Not for value, for respect. It was supposed to be routine. You arrived just before dusk. The station looks ordinary. Stone walls, sloped roof, a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. But as you dismount, the smell hits you. Soup. Thick, fatty, boiling something in a pot large enough to hide a horse's head. And someone is humming. You step inside. She doesn't look up. She's chopping wild onions with the kind of rhythm that says, "You're not the first courier today. You won't be the last." Every rider knows the horse isn't the only thing that keeps you moving. There's the cook who knows how to stretch one sheep into 4 meals. There's a farrier who resets a cracked hoof in under 10 minutes. There's the night guard who stares at a flame for hours, so you can sleep too. You know their names less often than your own horses, but you remember their hands. She ladles soup into a clay bowl and slides across the table. You nod in thanks. She grunts. Fair deal. While you eat, you watch the others. A boy cleans harnesses in the yard. His fingers move fast. His eyes never lift. Two men argue about grain weight. The older one keeps gesturing with a spoon. In the back, someone's grinding salt into a leather pouch like it's war powder. This isn't home, but it isn't a battlefield either. It's something in between, a place that understands what you carry, even if it never asks what's inside. Here's something rarely mentioned in records. Some station workers were born into the job. Families passed down posts like heirlooms. A grandmother would boil soup for riders for 40 years, never leaving her valley. Some left not even names behind. Just callous palms and clean knives. One rider once said, "The empire isn't fast because of horses. It's fast because someone made the water hot before you arrived." You believe it now. You've ridden in snow and sand and sleep. But it's the warm broth, the oiled saddle, the steady hands. That's what makes the road possible. Historians still debate how many people it took to keep the yam running. Some say one station needed 10 workers. Others say 50. One even claimed a single messenger relied on 200 support hands over a full route. There's no agreement, because no one ever counted the ones who didn't gallop. But you remember them, and tonight when you rest, you leave a small coin beneath your empty bowl. Not for value, for respect. It was supposed to be a routine task, Just a quick handoff of the message, the mounting of a fresh horse, and a relatively short 30-kilometer stretch to the forward post. Simple, predictable, until the moment your newly assigned mount refused to move. At first, you assumed it was mere stubbornness, the kind some horses exhibit with unfamiliar riders. But then you noticed a leg, a faint swelling just above the knee, subtle but wrong in all the ways a rider instinctively knows. The stable hand furrowed his brow, confused. He was fine this morning, he said, as if the horse's condition might somehow obey the calendar. Despite the concern, you tried anyway. The horse complied, barely, but its gait was uneven, not catastrophically so, but not fast enough for what you were carrying. You had a time-stamped scroll in your satchel, and the cold pressure of a ticking clock coiled inside your skull. There was no second mount available, no nearby post to request another. So you did the only thing left to do. You ran. The next 3 hours collapsed into a haze of dry wind, dust in your throat, the pounding rhythm of your own boots against uneven ground, and the dull ache of gear slapping against your ribs. You ran beside the limping horse, pulling it forward when it hesitated, pushing it onward when it slowed. The soles of your boots tore into your heels. Your breathing became sharp, then ragged. Each kilometer stretched like a lifetime. By the time you reached the post, words had abandoned you altogether. The garrison officer opened the scroll, skimmed its contents, then looked skyward, gauging the hour by the angle of the sun. Too late. The message had contained a last-minute amendment to troop deployment. One unit was to pivot east, another instructed to hold position. But the delay, those lost 30 minutes, fractured the maneuver's precision. The enemy had already begun to shift. The map the commanders thought they were playing on had redrawn itself without permission, and what was once a coordinated plan had become a liability. Later that evening, when the commotion had quieted into the dull hum of aftershock, you sat alone on an empty barrel, your legs still trembling. A clerk approached, not with fury, but with the slumped shoulders of someone who had seen too many small hinges swing too many large doors. He didn't accuse. He didn't raise his voice. He merely said 1 horse. And 20 days of planning broke apart. He handed you a tin cup of water and walked away without waiting for a reply. Mainstream history celebrates the YAM system's legendary speed and reliability, often with reverence, sometimes with awe. But they rarely dwell on the vulnerable edges, the moments when a horse was injured or a scroll arrived 30 minutes late, and entire strategies unraveled before a single arrow was loosed. Some historians argue that the system had redundancies built into it. Others quietly assert that in certain moments, none of the backups could ever be fast enough. One scholar, in a seldom-cited commentary, wrote, "In the Mongol Empire, time was not currency, it was strategy. And lost time didn't merely inconvenience. It allowed the enemy to write the next move. You were never punished. No tribunal, no reprimand, no scarring of record. But something shifted within you. From that day forward, you examined every assigned horse yourself. You learned to feel along the leg joints with quiet fingers. You smelled their breath for fever, checked their eyes for glassiness, carried spare bandages and wrapped hooves when necessary. And when another rider, younger and sharper-tongued, mocked you for your caution, you didn't explain or retaliate. You only asked, 'How many cities can a limp cost?' He didn't answer. He didn't need to. You haven't ridden in years. The saddle no longer fits. The scrolls now go to younger hands. The horses don't recognize your voice the same. But sometimes you still wake before dawn, and your fingers twitch, as if they're still holding reins. You thought it would feel like relief, to sleep, to stay, to not count miles in your head anymore. But the quiet, it's loud. It echoes with hoofbeats that aren't there. There's a place a few valleys west. They call it Whisper Rock. Retired riders go there. No ranks. No orders. Just old hands, old jokes, and stories that never made the scroll. You went there once. Listened to a man describe a storm that ate his compass. Watched another draw maps in the dirt. of roads that no longer exist. Someone passed you tea. Hot, bitter, perfect, and for a while, you stopped feeling like yesterday. You just felt still in motion. Some people leave the road. Others carry inside them. Historians still debate whether Mongol riders were given land after retirement. Some say they faded into civilian life. Others believe they became watchers, station elders, silent advisors. You don't know which is true. You just know this. Every time you hear hooves on packed earth, even now, your heart leans forward. One night, a young rider found you by the edge of the village. Asked, "Did it ever scare you?" You didn't answer right away. Then said, "Only once." He waited. You smiled. "The day I realized I never wanted to stop." The scroll is gone now. Delivered. Open. Decided. You sit in the quiet station, watching the last sparks in the hearth wink out. No more hoofbeats. No more torches. Just breath. And you wonder, will this system last? Historians will one day call it the Yam Network. But for now, it's just a road. A line of horses and stations, and people who don't sleep enough. But this line changes everything. It turns messengers into military units, turns hours into weapons, turns words into moves on the map before the enemy blinks. And it leaves behind something else, a blueprint. Centuries from now, kings in Europe will copy it. Relay riders in Persia, courier guilds in Italy, express posts in the Ottoman court. Even the Pony Express in America will look back and see the echo of your hoofprints. Then come trains, then wires, then satellites. But always, the same question remains. How fast will we know? The Mongol Empire didn't invent communication, but it reshaped the idea of what communication could do. It wasn't just about sending things. It was about knowing faster than the others. And that idea, simple, brutal, brilliant, never stop riding. You check your saddlebag one last time. Empty, but you don't feel useless. Because somewhere the system still runs. It no longer needs horses. It hums through fiber optics, jumps across cell towers, whispers through apps and alerts and digital scrolls. The empires have changed, but the idea hasn't. Tell me first, so I can act first. You walk outside. The stars haven't moved much, but the world has. And in your pocket, a small metal rectangle buzzes once. A message has arrived. It fits in your palm. But the road behind it, longer than any map could show. The winds have finally settled into stillness, offering no sound of hooves in motion, no lingering echo of voices carried across the plains, only the deep and solemn hush of a night that remembers everything. The scrolls, once sealed with urgency, have long since been opened and read. The riders who once galloped beneath the endless sky have long returned to silence, their shadows absorbed by time. And yet, high above, the stars remain patient, ancient, and watchful as ever. Far beyond, across the vast and sleeping steppe, the old roads lie quiet beneath the moonlight, half forgotten but never erased. And perhaps, just perhaps, somewhere along one of those fading trails, the echo of your heartbeat still lingers, still rides, still remembers what it means to carry something that matters. So now, at last, let yourself rest. The message has arrived, the burden lifted, and the candlelight has grown dim. Let the world wait just a little while longer, for there is nothing more to run from, nothing more to chase. The story, long and winding, has found its end. Good night.